Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Maple Grove Scripture Reading Podcast. So we are deep in Job chapter 31, which is Job's final defense. He's been making a series of self-imprecatory oaths, laying his life open before God and saying, here's the full record, test it. If I'm guilty of any of this, here is the judgment I'll accept. And last time we were in verses 13 through 23, which was the longest stretch of the chapter, and Job went through how he treated every person around him who had less power than he did. He had the servants who brought grievances against him, the poor, the widow, the fatherless, the naked, the person he could have crushed in court. And his claim was that he cared for all of them. And it wasn't grudgingly, it wasn't occasionally, but from his youth like a father. And the reason he gave at the end of the section was that it wasn't about reputation, it wasn't about community standing. It was because he dreaded the destruction from God. So fear of God's splendor kept him from doing wrong when nobody else was watching. So today we're going to be in verses 24 through 28. It's just 5 verses, shorter than the last passage, but they carry a particular kind of weight because of what they're targeting. It's not about what Job did to other people. It's about what Job did in his own heart, specifically what he ran to for security and what made him feel wonder. So let me read through Job 31, 24 through 28. If I have put my trust in gold or said to pure gold, you are my security. If I've rejoiced over my great wealth, the fortune my hands have gained, if I have regarded the sun in its radiance or the moon moving in splendor, so that my heart was secretly enticed and my hand offered them a kiss of homage, then these also would be sins to be judged, for I would have been unfaithful to God on high. So the first 2 verses are about wealth, and they're actually 2 separate things that Job disclaims here, which it's easy to miss if you read them as just one idea. The first is trust, putting his trust in gold, saying to it, you are my security. It's a statement about where your foundation is, what carries you when things get uncertain. A lot of people would say they don't worship money, and they mean that sincerely, like they don't bow down to it, they're not obsessed with it, they don't think about it constantly. But the test isn't what you think about on a normal Tuesday. The test is what you reach for when things start to feel unstable. What quiets the anxiety? What makes you feel like you're going to be okay? If the answer is a number in your bank account or a certain level of financial cushion, then gold might be functioning as your security, whether you would call it that or not. Now, the second thing Job disclaims is rejoicing over great wealth, over the fortune his hands had gained. That's subtler than trust. That's about where your satisfaction runs, what makes you proud, what you roll around in quietly. Job had been wealthy before all of this had happened. We know that from chapter 1, the livestock and the servants and the status. And his claim is that his heart never went to that wealth for its sense of self. He didn't rejoice in what his hands had accumulated as though that were the thing that made him somebody. These 2 disclaimers together, no trust, no rejoicing, cover the interior life of wealth worship pretty completely. One is about fear and the other is about pride, but both are about the heart. That's worth pointing out that Job is making these oaths after he's lost everything. He doesn't have the wealth anymore, which means he's not just claiming that he held it rightly when he did have it. He's demonstrating that he can articulate the right relationship to wealth without even flinching, even now in the wreckage. A man who trusted his gold would have nothing left to stand on, but Job is still standing. Now, the second half of the oath shifts to something that might seem unrelated at first, sun worship and moon worship. Job says he never regarded the sun and its radiance or the moon moving in splendor in a way that let his heart be secretly enticed. He never offered them a kiss of homage. Sun and moon worship wasn't unusual in the ancient world. It was in many ways the oldest and most widespread form of religious veneration that people ever practiced. Moses specifically warned Israel against that in Deuteronomy chapter 4. The pull toward the sky was real enough that it needed a direct prohibition. The heavenly bodies were consistent, powerful, beautiful, and completely beyond human control. In the cultures around Israel, they were divine. They had names, they had temples, praying toward the sun at dawn, lifting your face to the moon. These were religious practices, not just dead superstitions. The kiss of homage in verse 27, that is a specific gesture. When you couldn't physically approach the object of worship, and obviously you can't reach the moon, or you couldn't back then, but you would kiss your own hand and extend it outward toward what you were venerating. It's the same instinct as blowing a kiss. You're sending the gesture to someone too far away to touch. Ancient writers describe this as a common act of personal devotion to celestial bodies, something that you would do alone at night looking up. It's a private act of reverence towards something glorious. And Job says he never did that. More specifically, he says his heart was never secretly enticed by them. That phrase, secretly enticed, that's doing some work here. It links directly back to the adultery oath back in verses 9 through 12, where Job used the same language about a heart being enticed toward a woman. The sin in both cases start the same way. It's interior, it's quiet, it's private. The heart moves first. The outward gesture, the hand at the door, the kiss toward the moon, that follows after. Job isn't just claiming he never formally practiced sun worship. He's claiming his heart was never pulled that way. He never looked up at a brilliant sunrise and felt something shift inside him toward the sun itself rather than toward the God who made it. He never watched the moon rise in its silver path across the sky and felt his wonder curving toward the creation rather than toward the creator. That's a fine distinction, but it is the right one. The beauty of the sky is real. The appropriate response to it is awe. The question is where that awe lands. Psalm 19 opens with the heavens declaring the glory of God. The sun and moon aren't the destination of worship, they're the proclamation of it. And Job understood that. His heart was never enticed to stop at the creation and just stay there. Now, verse 28 names what both of these would have been, sins to be judged. And then it names the reason. He would have been unfaithful to God on high. That word unfaithful, that's covenant language. It's the same kind of language used for marital infidelity, for Israel abandoning gods for other gods, and things like that. It's not just wrongdoing, it's betrayal of a relationship. And that's what connects gold worship and sun worship. As different as they seem on the surface, they're both forms of the same betrayal. Gold answers the question of where you find security. The sun and moon answer the question of where you find wonder, beauty, something worth being awed by. Those are deep human needs, the need to feel safe and the need to feel small before something magnificent. And God is the right answer to both of them. When gold becomes your security, you've taken the need that belongs to God and handed it to a created thing. When creation becomes the object of your wonder rather than the window to God's glory, you've done the same thing from a different direction. Job's claim is that he never did either. His trust was in God, not gold. His wonder landed on God, not the sky. Something honest about the way that Job brackets these two together. Most people, if they're being straight with themselves, would recognize the temptation in at least one of them. The person who lies awake, running numbers, trying to calculate their way to feeling safe. Or the person who stands at the edge of the ocean or on a mountain trail and feels something that functions like worship and never asks what exactly they're directing it toward. Job names both, disclaims both, and calls both what they are, unfaithfulness to God. All right, next time we're going to go through verses 29 through 34, which is a cluster of character oaths that cover how Job treated his enemies and how open his table was to strangers, and then a sharp turn at the end that's different from everything else in the chapter. Verses 33 and 34 are about the hidden life, not just what Job did, but whether he ever hid who he was out of fear of what people would think. But again, that'll be next time. All right, we'll wrap it up here. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you again soon. God bless.